It is 6:30 p.m. I'm going to call the January 23rd City Plan Board meeting to order. Ms. McMillan, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Aaron Condon.
Here.
Stephanie Sutton.
Here.
Christian Newman.
Here.
James Blythe.
Here.
Robert Ackerman.
Here.
Megan Walker-Radke.
Here.
And Thomas Hawkins.
Here.
Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
We have a motion.
I would like, prior to adopting the agenda, to request that the chair and vice chair positions be corrected to reflect the current configuration of the board.
Yeah, we reached out to the clerk's office.
Okay.
It's an automatic thing that's part of the system, is my understanding, so we've asked them to do that.
Okay.
You're not the only board that has that issue.
All right, so I have a motion, an amended motion. And do we have a second? A motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Could I have a motion to adopt or approve the minutes from our last meeting?
So moved?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Mr. Hawkins. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Could we please read the announcement into the record, please?
Section 30-3.3 of the Land Development Code establishes the Plan Board, including its membership, rules of procedure and functions, powers, and duties. The Plan Board is advisory to the City Commission and on most planning petitions. Appeals of Plan Board decisions concerning special use permits are to a hearing officer within 30 calendar days of the decision. See Section 30-3.58C of the Land Development Code. The procedure for an appeal is set forth in Section 30-3.58.
Do we have any requests from the public to address the board on items that are not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward to old business. Could we please read the first item into the record?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First item is 190533, amend the City of Gainesville future land use map from City of Gainesville Plan Use District PUD, residential low density RL, single family residential SF, and conservation con to agriculture, and remove policy 4.3.4 of the future land use element in the City of Gainesville Comprehensive Plan.
Good evening. So this is a city-initiated land use change and comprehensive plan amendment that was initiated by the City Commission. This item has come before you a few times. It's been continued, but we are back to talk about it again tonight. The request was already read into the record, but it is to amend the future land use map to change the land use at the property in question to agriculture and remove policy 4.3.4 of the City of Gainesville Comprehensive Plan. So we've gone over the timeline of what's happened since 2007 when the larger part of the property was annexed. And so the City Plan Board had continued the item at its November meeting and had said that they wanted to see what the City Commission would do with the privately initiated PD zoning petition. So in December, the City Commission denied that PD zoning petition. So as outlined in the staff report and discussed at prior meetings, staff has reviewed this petition and recommends approval. I wasn't going to go through the entire presentation again since we've talked about it in length so far, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, do we have any questions for staff? Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you tell us in a little more descriptive description what happened in December?
Sure. So the privately initiated rezoning petition for the PD zoning that had been pending was heard before the City Commission. They discussed it and had concerns over a few different things. One of the things that was brought up were concerns over sprawl and the density and intensity of the proposed development. They didn't feel that it was conducive to providing development that wouldn't be auto-dependent, things like that. I don't know if Mr. Persons wants to add anything. Okay, so that was kind of the synopsis. So that was denied, and they had directed us to move forward previously with designating it all to
Yes.
agriculture.
Thanks.
Do we have any other questions for staff?
Just,
Mr. Ackerman?
Ms. McMullen, we're talking about the petition that the Plan Board approved in 2017, right? The
That
PB
is the one
PB
that was denied by
yeah,
the city commission.
That was finally denied.
Yes,
in December.
correct.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for staff? All right, I'm gonna move forward to the public hearing, since this is city initiated.
Petitioner may, there isn't a petition.
There isn't a petitioner,
The
is that
city is the
correct? So
petitioner.
this is a city initiated, so if there are any members of the public, or if the representative for the owner would like to speak. And just please remember to state your name for the record, and remember to sign in on the sign-in sheet.
Okay. Madam Chair, my name is David Coffey, representing the owner of the property. And since I'm not an applicant, I assume I'm subject to the 3 minutes, and so we'll be very brief. First, obviously, the owner continues to be opposed to this application. But for all the reasons that you delayed this last time, in order for there to be resolution with regard to the pending zoning petition, I would again urge you to delay again, because that pending zoning is still pending. We received the final order yesterday and filed with the city today a notice of appeal, which is all in accordance with the Land Development Code. And I'll leave you with copies of the notice of appeal filed, and certainly don't expect you to read it in the next few minutes, but I think you will, if you read through it, you'll see that it's not a frivolous appeal that's been filed, and the city's code has a fairly rapid process that unfolds when this appeal is filed, and it calls for a final decision ultimately by the hearing officer within 57 days. So for that reason, I would encourage you to not take action on this. For all the reasons you didn't before, they apply now, and allow the process to be concluded. And that would suggest delaying this hearing until late March. And that's really all I have to say, and I will leave you with copies of the notice of appeal. And it also includes an attachment, the actual final order that was issued by the City Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion or for a motion. Ms. Sutton?
So I submitted a Form 8B previously and can submit a new one if I need to. I will be recusing myself from this petition.
Mr. Ackerman?
Just comments. I support the petition to rezone this. It's been pending for 10 years for a variety of reasons. And at this point, the only thing that prevents any resolution of this is to delay it. Whether we approve it or not, or deny it, it still goes to the City Commission, which clearly wants to do what it wants to do. So at this point, the issue we're faced with is that we've got a land use designation that does not agree with the zoning designation, since we've never placed zoning on this parcel. We did place land use. So I'm in favor of approving the petition and changing the land use back to agricultural, and also the same thing for the upcoming zoning too.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I spent some time in the last couple of days thinking about this application and what makes sense at this area of town. And I reread through the comp plan provisions. There's like 11 pages in the future land use element that relate to this property. And we've been looking at the strike through underline in the packet, but I went back in the comp plan to read the sort of clean language. And it has a lot of positive language regarding wetlands protection, urban design standards, things that I think are good policies that, quite frankly, should be the norm everywhere in the community, but I know are not. The outcome that makes the most sense to me is if the commission's concern, and I think I understand kind of where the commission is a little bit better. When we first heard this in October, I hadn't thought about this application in, 11 years, something like that, 12 years. But I sort of gotten a sense of where it's been politically in those intervening time periods when I wasn't paying attention. And if the desire is to not have the dense or intense development that the comprehensive plan currently says is appropriate for this property, on the property, ultimately, the outcome that makes the most sense to me would be to go to the first paragraph in the comp plan. It's actually the third paragraph, but it's the first real substantive one that addresses the property, where it lists 1,890 residential units, 100,000 square feet of non-residential uses, and that's it. And there's more detail on those, but those are the big components of the development program. And instead, change those numbers to the number of units you get for rural ag, which is like 1 per 5, or about 365 units across this whole property, but keep the provisions that are positive that relate to the wetlands protection, urban design, etc. And the thinking behind that is it seems to be the direction that the commission wants to go in, but it prevents this outcome of having 5-acre ranchettes. I don't know that we would ever have this in 365 5-acre ranchettes across this property, but I spent enough time driving on 2-lane country roads in Alachua County to know that every single road I go down every single year, there's more and more 5-acre ranchettes in very far-flung parts of the county. So I know that trend line is happening. So I think the change that I'm describing would ensure that near the southern portion of the property, along the highway, there would be the amount of residential development that the comp plan would allow if it was designated rural ag or agricultural future land use designation, but it would still get some of the positive things that are currently in the comp plan. I'm interested in hearing what other planning board members have to say. This is the third time in 3 months that we've talked about this.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Newman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I missed probably one of the meetings where there was a lot of discussion about this. So, but I agree. I agree with Mr. Hawkins. I think that, I don't know, it seems very extreme just to go straight back to agriculture, and that there needs to be, I don't know, some middle ground. I understand it's been on this, there's been a lot of uncertainty about it, but I think that there is some value to the city of Gainesville for this piece of property to be something. And so there's a lot of other things in that area, and I just think that turning it back to agriculture, given the amount the amount of work that has sort of gone into thinking about this, probably from the owner, I think there needs to be more opportunity to try to figure something else here. So I'm not in favor of putting it back to ag.
All right. Do we have any other comments or discussion from the board? Ms. Radke?
So this is actually a question for staff. Obviously, the property owner has filed an appeal. I'd just like to understand a little bit more about how this petition fits within that context. If we take action on this how does that affect the appeal? Does it not? What happens with these two sort of competing ideas? Just an idea in terms of like the process that's going to occur.
It wouldn't affect the appeal. We have the city attorney here who may want to speak about it, but essentially what the property owner is doing is appealing the decision that the city commission made, and this is a separate application. So for the purposes of your decision tonight, we shouldn't worry about the appeal.
Mr. Ackerman.
And keep in mind also, I think that what we're trying, what the city commission is interested in doing, which I think is not a bad idea, is to sort of have a clean slate and start over using current land use regulations that were not in effect 10 years ago. And there's nothing that says that the owner can't resubmit this application with a new proposal. And in fact, in my recollection, I saw something that said the city commission invited that. I think the issue now is that it's so tied up in antique land use regulations that the city would like to just start fresh. And I think after this length of time, that maybe makes sense. I'm pretty sure the public hearing is closed.
Yes, I'm wondering if you would grant leave to comment on that.
If we limit it to 1 minute or less.
That is simply not the case. The PD application had demonstrated compliance with all current code provisions. And when it was recommended for approval by the plan board, that had been demonstrated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Do we have any other discussion from the board? Ms. Wakaratke.
So I watched the video from the city commission meeting on December 5th, and one of the takeaways that, for me, based on the comments of the commissioners, is that it seems like we're at a bit of an impasse. On the one hand, some of the commissioners' comments were that the wetlands need to be protected, and that would seem to imply that the development might be too heavy for that property. But at the same time, another concern that was stated was the impacts on transportation, that the development would not be dense enough to warrant extending public transit up into that area for a while until a certain sort of critical density is met. And I'm looking at this, and it just doesn't seem, I'm not seeing a solution that is going to be well met by the city commission with what's in front of us now. They're just, so I was sort of disinclined in the beginning to wipe the slate clean, just because I feel like so much work has gone into this, and I feel for the property owner in terms of the amount that they've invested, the amount of thought and planning that they've invested in this plan. But I also, at this point, don't see the city commission changing their mind on this either. And ultimately, they have the final decision making. So I guess that's where I stand, I guess.
Ms. Sutton.
So I understand different members' concerns and what's being said, and I can't vote on this petition. I would vote against it. I understand the concerns of the city commission, and they're welcome to vote their own way. Our vote is advisory to them. So I would just encourage you all to look at the code and the comp plan and try to determine if we think agriculture is an appropriate land use in this area. I personally have a concern making any area that's been annexed into the city and deemed appropriate for urban development agricultural again. But even if we give an advisory vote to the city commission to deny it, they can still approve it. So don't base your own vote, or I encourage you not to base your vote on what you think the city commissioners want. Like, we should be making independent decisions here.
Thank you, Ms. Sutton. I guess, Mr. Ackerman.
I'll make a motion to approve the petition to change the land use back to agricultural based on the staff report and the information we've heard today.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I think the motion fails for lack of a second. Do we have another motion? Mr. Hawkins?
I move that the city plan board ask staff to amend the petition and bring it back for our consideration to a form that reduces the development potential to that would be allowed under rural ag, but retains the provisions relating to development form and environmental protection, including clustering, that are in the current comprehensive plan provisions.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second to continue? Mr. Persons?
Madam Chair, I do have a concern about, I think what Member Hawkins is asking us to do is essentially redesign the site or design the site and bring that back to you. And I've got some concerns about that. I would rather that make a recommendation to the commission that they consider that and move it forward than to kick it back to staff to have us, try to brew something up that you think may be acceptable.
Okay, so we have a motion, input from staff. Do we have a second for the motion? Or are you willing to amend your motion, Mr. Hawkins?
If there's, I'm interested in hearing what y'all think, if that doesn't make sense. When I look at it, right, you make the development area, if you assume a typical lot size, shrink the developable portion to something that's comparable to accommodate that on the southern end, and then you change the numbers in the first paragraph, and then the vast majority of these paragraphs are still applicable in the exact same way. There's a couple of references to like vertically mixed-use development that should get stricken. Some paragraphs at the end that don't make sense in context if you just have a smaller number of residential units. But for the most part, it's not. I'm not suggesting it's not work, right? Some staff person's gonna have to go through this with a pencil and fix it, but it's not like designing a different PD layout plan. It's just changing the comp plan language. So I was not imagining that it would entail like urban design work by staff or drafting new comp plan provisions.
Mr. Ackerman?
I'm very much opposed to asking staff or anybody up here to redesign a project for an owner that has not. It seems like that would be for the owner to go back and redesign this project and then bring it back.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Ms. Walker-Radke?
So I guess I still feel like we have these competing priorities. So on the one hand, if we were to make some sort of request about reducing the density, you still have this question of sprawl, of encouraging car traffic because there's not enough density in that area to warrant additional transportation, public transit resources. At the same time, if you encourage a higher density per maybe what's allowed with this plan, the maximum that's allowed with this plan, then you run into those questions of whether it's an environmentally suitable area for density that heavy. And I would be interested to hear if anybody doesn't see that as a conflict, if anybody, sees those two issues and has some sort of resolution for them, because I see those two as really competing in this particular area.
Ms. Sutton?
So I think something interesting about what Mr. Ackerman had to say about the landowner going back to the drawing board and having to come up with something new is exactly the situation that they're in with a PD that was denied. Without changing the land use and zoning back to ag, they have a land use and they still don't have a zoning. And the PD was denied, and they understand the city commission's concerns, and they're at that point where they have to go back to the drawing board and work with staff and come up with a different PD that's going to potentially work for approval. But to do that does not require us changing the land use. The appeal process can happen, and whatever comes of that will come of that. If it ends up remaining denied, for the petitioner to develop this, they would have to come back with another PD. That's the way that the comp plan is written. And if it doesn't meet the densities, and if it doesn't address the concerns of the city commission, they can deny it again. But I don't see, I agree with Mr. Hawkins in that there's a lot of valuable policies in this comp plan that, the petitioner does need to address if they come back with another, PD application. I mean, I think it just struck me, the way that you just phrased it is exactly in the process what's going to have to happen without us approving this. So I just don't see the need to designate land that has been deemed appropriate for urban development by annexing it into a city to agricultural land use.
I'll just put my 2 cents in here since I haven't commented yet. Like Mr. Hawkins, I'm very concerned about the loss of protected conservation land area within the city limits. And just to wipe it all clean and say agriculture makes me nervous that gets rid of a lot of wetland protections and other things that I don't really want to see go away. I see the benefits to both sides, but I just, the idea of erasing it all makes me uncomfortable. Mr. Blythe?
It's a quick question, and this can be for staff as well. I was just wondering if it makes it, given that we've just gone in circles and circles, to be fair to kind of everybody, does it make it, and this is just kind of a naive question, does it make it easier or possible to move forward if it's wiped clean versus if it stays as is? Because as is seems to create a lot of problems, but if it's wiped clean, does that remove certain maybe rights that would be there that could potentially be taken away? Does one of these scenarios make it easier to move forward in a productive way that's kind of a win-win for the property owner and the city?
Does staff want to comment on that?
Sure, who can answer that question? I have 2 cents on that.
All right, Mr. Ackerman has 2 cents first.
You got to remember the original, and I was here, some of us were here for the original PD approval that we did in 2017. And it had kind of an elaborate setup, but one of the issues that we had was that the petitioner wished to save all of the wetlands, to save it into agriculture and to continue farming those wetlands. And Mr. Coffey made it clear at that time that we were preempted from regulating those wetlands because it was agriculture. Now, I understand you said after 2 years the landowner eventually consented, but our initial PD had the provision that unless you brought in all the rest of the non-PD material land, that the PD would evaporate. And so it took quite a lot of years before the landowner agreed to do that. And I think that's where we are now. And it's my concern that we're just going to be back where we were, and you can try it again of farming the wetlands as you are doing today.
Madam Chair, since
1 minute response.
again, with due respect, that is not entirely correct. What you said was the applicant wanted to retain the ability to continue silviculture within all of the wetlands. And that is far, far from what was at issue. It was, I don't remember the exact number, but something like 28 acres out of the 1,700 acres. The wetlands most proximate to the wellfield protection area, where virtually all the wetlands out there are being managed as silviculture. And so anyway, the magnitude of the continued silvicultural operations within wetlands was minute, but ultimately given up in order to finally accomplish consensus, we thought.
Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to respond to Member Blythe's question. I think that in order to go forward productively, there has to be some kind of a process that incents like engagement from whoever the property owner is, and I don't know what that is. I think I don't know enough about the history to know what that is. I know folks who work for Plum Creek, and I know the lawyer for the applicant. I also know all the city commissioners and most of the planning staff, and I think all those people are very sort of reasonable and people who I like. So, you know, it's a mystery to me how we got into this circumstance, and Member Ackerman to kind of shed a little bit of light by talking about some of the history and disagreement over silviculture activities in wetlands, and so maybe there's feelings over that. It seems to me that working from the status quo, like if you want to get from where you are to where you want to be, it's easiest to work with the status quo. Like there were a lot of compromises that went into creating what's in the comp plan now, and if they aren't the compromises that we would make today, well, at least we can start with them to refine, reduce the number of units, or get better design standards, or manage stormwater in different place. I don't know what they are, and it's the staff's priorities, our priorities, and the commission priorities would lead to them. It just seems like whatever that ultimate vision is, we're probably closer to it with the current comp plan language than with an agricultural future land use designation. But that's absolutely could be wrong. I would add a couple of other things, just generally based on my knowledge of this area. Like the development that's up there now is bad, right? It's like the county's waste transfer station. It's the mobile home park that got converted to single family housing that doesn't look so great and is super isolated. It's the industrial park where Keith Perry's office is. It's the industrial park where like FedEx and the Regional Planning Council are. None of that's nice. Our absolute worst outcome, in addition to the specter that I raised earlier of the 5-acre ranchettes, is like death by 1,000, 5 to 15 acre changes in zoning, right? If this landowner thinks that the best economic opportunity for this property is to sell everything within 100 yards of the street, and we just, right? And how do we say no to just another small industrial park, right? It's right next to the existing industrial park, right? Or that's the kind of thing. I think that working with this framework that we have here will get us a better quality development product. So it's a better sort of line between where we want the urban area to be and where we want the rural ag area to be. And that could be completely wrong. I can't predict the future, but based on everything I know, that seems to be the most, that's why the proposal that I made is the one that I made. That seems to be the most sensible. And knowing also that the city commission probably wouldn't just accept it, they would want to make their own changes to it, as they well should, right?
Okay, so unless there are more comments, I think your motion is still open.
And it died for lack of a second, right? Did somebody second it?
No, maybe not. So I need another motion then. Mr. Hawkins? Anybody? Mr. Newman?
I move to deny the petition.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Mr. Blythe?
What happens next if this is denied?
City commission considers it. Yep.
Mr. Persons, your light was on and then it's off.
It
now
was
it's
on, it's off, it's on. No, I was gonna respond before, but that's an obsolete light, and I was just gonna answer Member Blythe's question. So it'll go on to the city commission, and I think what's important is that the commission will likely review the tape and listen to the plan board's comments as it moves forward. So I mean, I don't anticipate that this will be the end of this conversation with the eventual redevelopment of the site. So.
Thank you, Mr. Person. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to the next item on the agenda.
Next item, Madam Chair, is the zoning. It is 190534, rezone property from Alachua County Agriculture to City of Gainesville Agriculture.
Ms. McMullen?
Yes, so this is the corresponding rezoning petition that goes along with the previously heard land use petition. So currently, the property is still zoned Alachua County Agriculture. The zoning was never changed at the property. The City Commission, as I previously mentioned, denied the PD rezoning request in December. So this would be required if the land use were to be changed to agriculture. So the request is to rezone from Alachua County Agriculture to City of Gainesville Agriculture. And based on the review criteria and previous discussions, staff recommends approval of this petition.
All right, so are there any members of the public that wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Do we have any discussion or comments? Would anybody like to make a motion? I assume you're
Yeah, I'm
another
I
8B
assume this as
recluse?
well.
Okay. Mr. Ackerman?
Well, we're in a fix now. The issue is, of course, that at this point, the property has no zoning, no city zoning on it. There was a proposed PUD, which is now gone. I guess our only alternative is to make it the closest to what the county zoning is, so we should approve the petition. Yeah, it doesn't match, but what else are we gonna do? Just do nothing?
Mr. Hawkins?
I move denial. We got to.
Then we just leave it for 10 years now. It's been unzoned for, effectively unzoned.
Well, the proposed zoning, though, doesn't match the comp plan.
I understand that.
You,
Ms. Sutton?
I don't
Sorry,
think
Madam
that
Chair.
you can vote to support this. This zoning proposal isn't consistent with the comp plan policies
true.
at all. So to vote for this zoning is completely against the comp plan policies specific to this land. I mean, I can't vote on it, but it would go against multiple comp plan policies.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Ackerman?
I'll make a motion to deny.
We already have a motion,
Was there a
This is for the
and
zoning.
Mr. Newman got a really quick second.
Oh,
in.
sorry, I didn't hear.
So, so that was a motion to approve the agriculture zoning, is that
No,
correct?
to deny.
To deny,
I withdrew what, I didn't actually make the motion, but
okay,
I was going to, and I'm happy to second a denial.
okay, so. What
We
was,
got Hawkins denial.
Hawkins.
Newman second.
so we have a motion to deny
Yes.
already up,
Yes. Just need a vote.
okay. Any comments? All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? The denial passes unanimously.
Get the city commission worried about it.
Moving on to new business, could we please read the first item into the record?
It is 190696, nomination for placement of the Masonic Lodge number 41 onto the local register of historic places.
Good evening, Sarit Sera, city architect. Last month, I came here to give you an informational item about this building and the process of nomination to the local register for historic places. And we had a discussion which was informational. On January 7th, the Historic Preservation Board approved the nomination on their level unanimously. And today we have the formal application here for you for discussion. And we're here for any questions. We have representatives of the Masons here, and we have planning staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sella. Do we have any comments or questions from the board? Any, would the Masons like to say anything to this item, or?
Please.
All right, please come to the microphone, state your name, and be sure to sign in before you leave.
If I could borrow a pen, I'd be delighted to. Thank you so much. My name is Patrick Jacob. I'm the president of the Masonic Lodge here in Gainesville. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you. We're not contesting that the lodge is absolutely a historic building. It's one of the gems of Gainesville. What I'm really here is about the financial impact that this potential designation has had on the lodge. We are a organization of very limited means, and the 100-year renovation that's necessary for this historic building is simply beyond our means as a, dues-paying organization. And so we have tried to sell the lodge. We've tried to sell the lodge to the city. We've tried to sell the lodge to a private purchaser who is the owner of other historic buildings in Gainesville. And when it was clear that this process was going forward, he canceled the contract for $700,000 to buy the lodge. So this process has resulted in direct financial injury to our organization and jeopardizes the private renovation of this structure. And I think is tantamount to a taking of this lodge through municipal means. And we are very concerned that this is really not appropriate. We have no intention to demolish, destroy, or deface this building. We are thoroughly committed to that. And we are trying to raise the $1 million or more necessary to renovate this over a period of years. It is still hopeful that we will find a like-minded buyer. Despite the assurances of a number of organizations like this that I've had the privilege to come and meet with, that being placed on the city historic list has no financial implication to the renovation of a building, market forces in Gainesville contradict that misconception. And potential buyers are frightened by this designation. And that, again, represents further financial injury to my organization. And so I rise to speak against this motion. The building is under no threat. We will, in all likelihood, undertake piecemeal renovation. We may have to do it through bake sales or who knows what. Maybe you'll buy a raffle ticket one day. But this designation does nothing to move the ball forward on renovating the building and makes it more difficult for the current owners to do so and has already resulted in financial injury. We've had this building for more than 100 years. What is the big deal that you got to do it now? Happy to answer any questions, but that's really all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Jacob. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Jacob?
I have a question for staff.
Mr. Ackerman?
I guess I'm somewhat taken aback. I was under the impression that the owner was in accordance with this designation, but obviously that's not true.
The owner was notified and they have the right to object or support, and this is the time and day for it. Yeah.
And what are the ramifications that would scare off a purchaser of this building that Mr. Jacobs has referred to?
Yvette Thomas, planner with Department of Doing. Based on what I'm hearing, I'm assuming that there's concern about the designation being placed, and due to the designation being placed, that there could be some additional requirements. Those requirements would only come into place when there are changes or any proposed changes that would be made to the building. Placing it on our local register would make the property eligible for the local historic tax or the historic tax exemption program. The property is already on the National Register of Historic Places, which makes it eligible for the National Historic Tax Credit Program. So I'm assuming that some of the concern is just the requirements that go with it being placed on the local register and requiring any changes be approved by the Historic Preservation Board. But it does not affect the current zoning or the use of the building at all.
And is there, and I don't know anything about the Masons in all candor, but are they a tax exempt organization?
Yes.
So
Please
this
come
building
forward
is already tax exempt?
If I may.
Yes, please.
We are a charitable organization, and as such, the designation of historic building to us means nothing. I really don't understand the motivation of this. My understanding is that it confers no benefit It confers no increased access to funding for renovation or repair of the building or maintenance. We are already tax exempt, so we don't pay local ad valorem taxes on this. We have no taxable income to speak of, so other than that, it really is absolutely not in our best interest, unequivocally. It is not what we want, clear. And the potential buyer may well have wound up in somebody's office. I heard there was quite a ruckus this week when he wanted to find out what he could do to divert this process. And as the owner of several historic downtown buildings, my guess is that he sees this as burdensome. And by trade, I'm a neurosurgeon. I really don't know much about renovating historic buildings, but I may end up having to learn. But I can say that in speaking to probably 20 or 30 different parties coming through the lodge, when the specter of being placed on this role was brought up, it absolutely unanimously brought cringes to the face of potential buyers. So I don't know where the board may be getting their information from, but in the community, this is a negative connotation to a potential buyer. It makes the property to renovate a historic building considerably more expensive, as is reported to me, and considerably more laborious to navigate the bureaucratic jungle that you're then required to do. So I don't see any benefit. It's not going to help me. It's not going to help my lodge. It's not going to help me raise money to get money to renovate this building, and it's scaring off potential buyers. There has already been the loss of $700,000 sale that the lodge could have then gone and reinvested in the community somewhere else, and then a private redevelopment of this, to renovate the lodge for some public use would have been undertaken, and that's been thwarted. So this has really got no upside and a lot of downside. I would urge you to stop this process, reconsider, and think about what you're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Jacob. Mr. Blythe?
Sorry. Good question for staff, maybe. Without the designation, so national designation is in place. Without a local designation, can this building be demolished?
Yes, and just to add, even if with a local designation, the building can still be demolished. Essentially, what the local designation does is that any exterior work to the building, any applications for demolition or alteration to the building would go through the city's historic preservation board for a certificate of appropriateness. So it would be reviewed in concordance with the Secretary of Interior standards for historic buildings. That's the major difference between the local designation versus the national. And the national designation is largely honorific. It opens up opportunities for tax credit for renovation. The local designation is where some of the limitations on the actual renovation of the building or alteration. And as Ms. Thomas indicated, the city's ad valorem tax program, but that's typically more for commercial buildings, not necessarily for institutional ones.
Mm-hmm. I've got a couple other questions. Does the local designation impact the exterior as well as the interior?
Just the exterior.
Just the exterior.
Correct.
So you could go in and change the interior to your heart's content.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So with all the things that come with designation, obviously the designation is kind of more of a community-based item. It's hard to believe that there's not some sort of grants or other funding that encourage historic buildings to be renovated, whether it's public or private. Does Gainesville have any incentives for local? And if not, is there any kind of regional or national incentives that could be named out?
Saritsela, to the best of my knowledge, the national registration gives a matching grant of up to $250,000. And I know that from renovation of Thomas Center a few years ago, so that's from memory.
Okay.
But there is a matching grant if you are consistent with the historic nature. Right. The local registration allows it protects from demolition. When the city was negotiating the sale, we had an appraisal made, and the sellers requested to have an appraisal that looks into the case of demolition of the building, which would possibly raise the price. And that's how the discussion started. I believe that you got a memo about that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Sutton?
I had some similar questions about just the process and the Historic Preservation Board, but I'm also curious, this, regardless of how we vote, does this go to the City Commission? Because this isn't something that we do very often.
Yes,
So
it
where
is.
are we in this and what happens?
Again, it would be your advisory board, and you're making a recommendation to the city commission.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is it Dr. Jameson?
It's Dr. Jacob.
Dr. Jacob, thank you, sir. My apologies for not hearing your name in the first call. So when Dr. Jacob was describing his interactions with folks who didn't necessarily think positively of historic districts, I was thinking of how in my experience I encounter like the exact opposite, right? And that's because that's who I spend time with, right? I've lived in a historic district for 14 years. I've owned a couple different pieces of property in the city. They've all been in historic districts. My kid goes to daycare in an historic district. You know, that's just right. That's sort of where I spend my time and who I interact with. So we probably self-select the folks that we talk to and the kind of responses that we get of their values. And I think that the idea of honoring historic structures and wanting to save the culture that they represent and the tie of the history that they give us as a community really is fundamentally a question of values, right? Like what did Gainesville value in the 1960s or the 1970s? Ms. Selah probably knows, when it decided to save the Thomas Center, right? Or when the community came together and said, we want to do this. What are the values of every person who has bought a home in Gulfview or in Pleasant Street or in the Duck Pond or the Southeast Historic District, and put up with an old HVAC system and water heater and a creaky wooden floor in order to be able to restore original paint colors and replace siding as it rots and create one small piece that contributes to an urban fabric for the entire city. That's really, it's fundamentally a question of values, right? And I think that because of organizations and people in government having those values, Gainesville's a much greater place today than it would otherwise be. And when I think about the things that we've lost, like the courthouse that used to be across the street where we've got the county administration building now, like the city hall that used to be on this lot, have y'all seen pictures of that building? Absolutely gorgeous, but it's not here anymore. Like the Episcopal Church, where I actually was raised going to daycare on 43rd Street. Those losses, right, they're incremental, but they add up. Those little cuts add up to be a big harm. So I know when I think about my values and the values that I want our community to have, I want us to honor that history and to carry forward that legacy into the future. And a really great way to do it is to say, we are going to review as a community modifications to historic buildings or the potential question of demolishing an historic building. And you absolutely can build new stuff in historic districts. You absolutely can't change buildings in historic districts. And you can even, if the conditions are met for a certificate of appropriateness for demolition, even demolish buildings in historic districts. So none of those outcomes are forestalled. We're just making a commitment to having that conversation when that time comes. So when the board's ready for a motion, I'm happy to make a motion with a staff recommendation to approve the nomination.
We'll get there.
Yeah, that's why I'll wait for to make that motion.
We had, we let board members comment and then we'll open it and then we'll close it again after public comment. So we're not ready, we're not at the motion stage quite yet. Do we have any other comments from the board before we open the public hearing? All right, now if you'd wish to speak, we're open to, that's okay. Keep us on track, it helps, believe me. So now just make sure you state your name for the record and you sign in.
Hello, my name is Kira Lucas. I am a member of the Historic Preservation Board. I came here today as a representative. Of course, I can technically only speak for myself. We approved this motion when it came to us at the beginning of the month because while it is designated nationally, getting it designated locally would give us the opportunity to put a demolition hold delay on the structure if it got sold to someone who wanted to do any harm to it. As far as the process, it goes to commission, they ultimately get the final say. I came here to ask you guys to help push it forward towards them, to ask them to also approve it, because it gives the preservationist time, even if it does go to someone who wants to get rid of it, and all we can do is put a demolition hold on it. That gives us time to try to find someone who can preserve it or buy it. It gives us time to try, even if nothing happens from it. And as far as the finances go, getting it nominated locally strengthens its ability to get grants, both federally and from the state, matching grants, small loan grants. It would also provide stronger relationships with the community to create local partnerships to save it. I know there are multiple land conservation people in the area and companies and organizations. They could partner with the university to help offset the cost of some of those preservation needs. Also, like our staff said, we don't regulate the interior. And while the exterior does need some renovation and it will cost money, a large portion of that estimate goes to the interior renovations, which, yes, also need to be done, but we don't regulate. We're not telling them that they have to. They can do that on their own time. We're not even telling them they have to preserve the outside. We give them help and aid and education. And so we're asking, or I'm asking, as part of the Historic Preservation Board, to approve this, to give the city and the preservationists time to work with the Masonic Lodge and everyone else to help save this structure for the community and for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Ms. Sutton.
Can I just get clarification from staff on one thing that she mentioned? My understanding is any building that's over 50 years old in the city gets a demolition delay. Is the demolition delay different if it's a historic structure? Is it longer than the 90 days? Is it 6 months?
I believe it's the same.
So really this designation wouldn't make a difference in the demolition delay?
Well, no, it still would, because it would still need to go before the board.
Yeah, the difference is the demolition delay applies to properties that are not on the local register or outside of the historic districts based on their age and whether they've been surveyed. If it's inside of a historic district or it's a locally, individually locally nominated building, then it goes through the COA process so that you can't, there's no delay because it has to get approved in order to do a demo. So demo otherwise they could apply for it, the delay period lapses, and then they can demolish.
Mr. Ackerman?
I also have a question for staff. If we put it on the local register, my understanding is that at least at one time there was a staff person who dealt with historic structures, and is that true? Used to be D. I don't know who it is now.
Right now, Mr. Simmons has still been filling in as our historic preservation planner.
I guess.
However, we have we are currently potentially negotiating with the candidate, so for the full-time position.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to embarrass you.
No.
My question then is that staff person available to assist an owner of a historic building on grants and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the position, I think, is one of a facilitator for that very reason, in terms of like looking at grant opportunities for particularly for like landmark structures, working with individual applicants on design, particularly sort of in the weeds design, So yeah, that's absolutely would be the part of the person's role.
And I would just add a comment, and I understand your concern and lots of concerns. Some of those concerns are based on a lack of information about what this involves. And a lot of general information is that once you have a historic designation, that now you're bogged down in massive amounts of minutia. And my own personal experience is that has not been true, and that in fact you end up with an ally who's going to assist you in moving forward on the renovation that you're interested in doing. And for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and support this motion. I'm sorry.
We don't have a motion yet.
This potential motion.
Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm trying to, this is the first time something like this has come up before me on a board like this, so this is new thinking for me. I guess one question I have is, what was the motivation to look at this, and was it that the structure was up for sale, and is this partly also influenced by what happened at St. Michael's? So I don't know. I mean that might be a difficult question to answer, but I'm just trying to get an understanding of what was the motivation to move forward with this, at this point in time.
Saritsela, as I mentioned before, the city was negotiating a deal to purchase the building. We had to reappraise the building to make sure that the estimated value is to current market. When we came up with the current, it was November or September 19, appraisal, the attorney of the owners requested that our appraisal would be modified to check the condition of demolition of the building to see if that would change the appraised value. When we came back to the commission, they were concerned and asked us to nominate the building.
So I'm not, and maybe I'm just being tense, I don't quite understand what that means. I mean, I understand. I mean, like, what's the ramifications of that? Was it decreased the cost of the building and made it so that they didn't want to sell it? What was?
No, but the attorney asked us to look at the case study for the appraisal, that you demolish the building and build a high-rise instead, and that raised some flags. That was the situation.
So what flags were raised? What's the?
It raised the commission's concern that the intent is to demolish the building and maybe potentially build a building instead, a tower or something.
So, okay.
It is not in a historic district, so it is zoned downtown. It has that.
Mr. Blake.
So that was one of my questions. It's not currently a contributing historic structure?
It's not within the geographic boundaries of the historic district.
I did want to ask, I guess this would be a staff question. Is it in any CRA districts or in any corridors that have incentive funding or matching grants that would be local wild spaces money? Is there any way to create categories for historic renovation?
Within the wild spaces, the intent was to purchase it with the Wild Spaces Cultural Center funds and to renovate it. That was the intent. The building is also in the CRA area, former downtown. It could get some facade grants or things like that, which would be available for a private owner. Wild Spaces money will not be available for the private owner.
Great. So I've worked on several projects that have utilized the CRA grants for facade grants, and we've got one currently going in the Grove Street area. It's a fantastic program. And if we're talking about mostly the exterior being the number one priority, there is absolutely local incentives that have actionable items and logical steps forward. The design of those items is also covered usually in this grant funding, so working with a design professional. I think it was mentioned that at UF, the DCP has a historic preservation program. I did go up to Nantucket for a summer, and while I wasn't doing the historical mapping and the laser mapping and the documentation, I'm almost certain that they would be interested in this as a local project to take on. So I know there's a lot of local resources that would be very engaged in helping even a private owner do the right thing to the building. If the intent really is not to demolish it, but to restore it, a lot of these things, this designation would only seem to bolster that sort of claim of trying to keep the building and restore it. By not designating it, it's actually going to make it more difficult to restore it and would reduce some of the potential funding, is what I'm hearing.
Ms. Sutton, are you
I
just
was
having
trying to
trouble
turn it
with
off
your
and
light?
it's not doing it.
There you go. Do we have any more comments from the board? Or do we have a motion? Mr. Hawkins?
Madam Chair, I move the City Plan Board approve the nomination for placement of the Masonic Lodge number 41 under the local register of historic places.
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Mr. Ackerman. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
Motion passes 5-2. All right. Moving on, I believe we have one information item on tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We were approached by the Census Complete Count Coordinator, but I don't see them here, so I'm not sure if we have a presentation for you. So we'll touch base with them and bring them back to the next night.
We'll try to get somebody here next time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I thought Kristen Young might come, but I guess we can get that done.
Mr. Hawkins?
I had a comment for board member comment.
Okay. Moving on to board member comments. Mr. Hawkins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a joint meeting with the City Commission last June where we prioritized a long list. It was like 40 items, 50 items? A long list of things, the majority of which were legislative changes that we wanted to see in the comp plan and the land development code. And we haven't made a lot of progress in that list. We have dealt with the tree mitigation code changes, which are on that list. Everything else is coming really slow. And I know it takes time to produce backup and recommendations for boards. I know also probably some of these are going to get punted to the year update. But I kind of wanted to raise this and make a point and ask a question. And I didn't tell Mr. Persons I was going to bring this up. I apologize. We don't feel put on the spot. The point that I wanted to make is we've heard a lot of legislative changes proposed since then that weren't on that list. They were all good things for us to talk about. Like we talked about food parks. We talked about RV parks for a couple of meetings. What else did we talk about? We've had a couple of them. And those are all good things, but like I don't think that they're necessarily more important than anything on that list. I kind of want to get a sense of that prioritization. How is it that that when an applicant asks for something, it gets on the list faster than something that the board or that the commission has said that it wants to do? And then sort of, can you kind of give us a sense of where we are on that list? Should we have maybe an information item at the next meeting where we go over it? Kind of, I want to sort of put the question to Mr. Persons. So what can we do to get through that list this decade? That's legit.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess to answer your first question, the amendments you had mentioned, those are privately initiated amendments by private property owners that the city's had a long-standing, I'm not sure policy is probably too strong of a word, to generally move those applications through to the plan board and onto the commission. We've had conversations with the commission in the past about sort of where they want to see private amendments, how they want to process private amendments. The general direction that we've gotten from them is like, yeah, just move them along. If we want to kind of come up with some different way to do it, from staff's perspective, that's fine. It'll change again in a couple of years, I'm sure. As far as moving the some of the other items on the list, tonight we were supposed to have accessory dwelling units come before you, but we had to go back and fix an advertising issue that came up. We're slowly moving through the list. We've had staff who have been working on these items who no longer are working at the city. I mean, that's the very mundane reason why some of these things have moved slowly. Obviously, we have priorities coming at us that are not things that are on the list that sometimes take up our time. We're happy to do an information item. We can go through the list if you'd like at a upcoming meeting. And sort of go from there.
May I have a follow-up question? I'm sure.
Go ahead.
How much does it cost to do a privately initiated code amendment? So, like, if I thought that something on that list was really important, how much? What kind of check do I have? What kind of fee do I have to pay the city to go to the front of the line?
I don't know what the cost is. Probably about $1,000 or so.
Okay, so $1,000, and that gets you right up at the top,
Right.
behind the other people who paid $1,000.
Right. I mean, we take in, as you know, there's city sort of initiated amendments, and then there's applications that we get from private property owners, and there's not any strict sort of hierarchy about how those things get processed. It ultimately comes down to a decision from the manager of the city. So.
Other than our citizens count for something.
That's right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Persons.
Mr. Ackerman?
Mine's a far less lofty
question than Mr. Hawkins. I'm increasingly concerned about how sloppy we are. We no longer update the Plan Board website, which is where people have been trained to go find out what we're doing. We have a surprising number of Plan Board groupies that can no longer find. And it's a bad thing for us to be a mysterious organization that nobody can find our agendas. And this past month, as of last Friday, we weren't even on the Legistar as having a meeting scheduled. And so that concerns me. I don't know why we're doing that. If we're abandoning the Plan Board led website, could we at least put a link on it that says, here's where you go find the current agenda, so that we don't get the sense that we're some kind of secret organization.
Ms. Sutton?
Yeah, as a follow-up to that, and maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I remember we would have agendas posted before they were like totally complete with all the attachments.
Right.
And that was really helpful. So it was nice to know when the agenda was set, which is usually probably around the time notices have to go out a couple weeks in advance, just to know, what we're looking at for the meeting and what topics in general. I understand that the materials may not be ready until a week before, and lately haven't been ready a week before, which is nice. It's nice to have those materials to review on the weekend and not have to do on a weekday evening, which can be pretty hectic, for those of us who work and have small children at home. So I would just echo what Mr. Ackerman's saying. If we can get things posted prior to the weekend, and if we can get just plain agendas to know just how packed it's going to be. If I'm, arranging for a babysitter, I want to give them some idea of how late I'm going to be that night. That would be really helpful for us, I think.
Well, and keeping in mind, we're volunteers, and so if we get our packet on Monday, sometimes we're not around or we've got other things to do. It'd be nice if we had as much time as possible and at least a weekend.
And I think board members have also made their concerns known before, that sometimes you'll click on the link that seems like it's the right link, and it goes to whatever that same agenda item that was there 6 months ago, and it doesn't give you the updated information. Today, when I was going through everything again, I noticed the date on the top of the Weyerhaeuser amendment was still October or November, and I wasn't sure if I was looking at the right thing. I wasn't sure if I was looking at the packet for tonight, or if I had somehow stumbled upon the packet from a couple of months ago and I didn't know where I was going. And I've been on the board for 10 years. So if I can't figure out where I'm going, and I've been on the board for 10 years, there's a problem in the process. So it seems like little stuff, and it seems like, oh, it's just this one thing or just this other thing, but it adds up. And again, like, I work nights, I have to take off work to be here. It's an organizational thing for my organization to get me to be able to be here, and to be scrambling at the last minute to find things. It's really hard. So if we could do a better job of that, I think it would be appreciated across the board, pun intended.
Absolutely.
And we do have a public that frequently is interested in what we do.
Right. And I think I've mentioned this before, but the way that we used to do agendas, we no longer do, because all of the boards are now on Legistar, which is the same
Then
agenda.
take down the old page so people don't go to the wrong spot.
Yeah,
At
we
the
can
very least.
absolutely do that.
Or redirect to Legistar.
Yeah.
Just have plan board agendas are now found at.
Yeah, that's exactly what you need
Yeah.
to do.
And that's not a huge fix. I don't know much about web design, but that's not
I don't
a huge
either.
fix.
It would take about 30 seconds.
Mr. Newman?
Yeah, I just sort of go into what Mr. Hawkins, I think one of the other, it would be, and it goes to all these things, is having, again, I think that we should be moving through some things, and I understand, but again, you could even, just knowing, if there were just okay, on the next meeting, hey, these are the things from that list that we're gonna likely sort of be getting to. That just kind of helps. So, if there could be some sort of plan, and in understanding that things are gonna come up, I'd sort of bump it back, but that I think would be sort of helpful to us, and I think to the public, because, it does, more information makes it easy, just helps us with some thinking and planning, so.
Grumpy plan board.
Anything else?
I have one more comment. In the past, we've done trainings with the city attorney and with other members of staff, just on general knowledge that the plan board needs to have. We've had, we did one very useful luncheon on the sunshine laws, which made me feel a lot more confident that I was actually doing the things I was supposed to be doing. It would be helpful to continue to have, maybe every 6 months, maybe once a year, to have some kind of continuing education luncheon for the plan board. I think that's been very useful in the past. The composition of the board is similar in some ways, but has changed in others, and I think getting us all on the same page on some of these things from time to time would be useful. I don't know what topics our new members might be interested in, but that's something that I would like to continue to be able to do as a board.
Yeah, we can have Mr. McDermott come and do his public records law and all of that stuff.
Anything like that I think would be helpful and useful, or even the relationship of our board to the other boards. What we were learning about with the Historic Preservation Board tonight, that's something that we could cover in a lunch, and then not have to ask so many questions. When an item comes up like this, we won't have to ask so many generic questions. So I would appreciate that. I saw you reaching for your light.
I just wanted to tell staff, I love you.
We love you.
I don't want to end on a bad for the last 5 minutes.
You're my favorite board.
Despite appearance.
We've lost Mr. Ackerman. Our next meeting date is February 27th, 2020, and I call this meeting adjourned.